I could be watching Stranger Things Season 3 right now, but I put off making this video like an idiot. Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Justine. Today is the release date of Stranger Things Season 3, so as you can see, I couldn't help but represent for this video. I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish this video with enough time to watch at least one episode before I go to work. Fingers crossed, but I'm going to try not to rush this because then it doesn't feel good for you and it doesn't feel good for me. Today, I'm going to tell the story of my cosplay origins. I don't think I've ever told this story in full really to anyone, just because it doesn't casually come up like, hey guys, you want to know exactly how I started in this dumb hobby right now while we're all busy doing stuff? No, doesn't really happen. Oh my god, this hat is totally gonna fall because I didn't pin it in. I have to get a pin. Okay, that should hopefully help. We'll see. But now I've lost my place in what I was saying, so we're just gonna jump right into the story. We're gonna skip everything else. So, my humble origins started on Tumblr. Yes, on Tumblr. So, I made my Tumblr account back in 2010. I went and actually checked to make sure I got that date right. And this was still during the time where there was this thing, you weren't allowed to actually talk about having a Tumblr. And if people brought it up, you were supposed to tell them that the website had viruses and it would ruin your computer, which is just wild. I'm not entirely sure how that started and or why that started, because if you stop a website from growing its user base, the website shuts down. So I don't know. I never played that game, but it was a thing. So I was on Tumblr, 2010. Didn't really start using it a lot until 2011. That's when I really started to reblog things and actually post stuff. So it took me a while to really get into it, and maybe it's because people kept telling me that my Tumblr would give me viruses. I don't know. My Tumblr in its heyday was very different than now, which makes sense. But back then I posted a lot of Invader Zim stuff. A lot of Invader Zim stuff. I posted a little mix of Disney, mostly Peter Pan. This was also back in the days of what, Spieling Peter. I don't think I've ever said that in person. I've only ever read it. If you know what that is, you know what that is, and we're not getting into it. It was not a good time. A lot of I was a scene kid. A lot of stuff that kind of related to that. So, just this weird eclectic mix of random stuff, mostly Invader Zim and Disney. It was on Tumblr that I slowly started to see cosplay really for the first time for myself. I'd heard of it mostly in the context of, what are they? Star Trek conventions. Mostly in that. That was the big thing. That's where people cosplayed. And while I watched Star Trek with my dad, I'm not a huge Star Trek kid, so it wasn't ever something that I was like, oh yeah, cosplay, that's definitely something I would do. It didn't even cross my radar. And then I started to see it on Tumblr, and I started to see it for other things. Mostly I'm gonna assume Disney at the start. That makes the most sense to me. And I definitely was like, hey, that's pretty cool, because it is. It's very cool. But cosplay at this time still had a very negative, very hugely nerdy association with it. And don't get me wrong, it is still very nerdy. It's still very nerdy. It's just grown in popularity and seen as more now. So, while I definitely wouldn't call any of us cool, certainly not me, I'm definitely gonna call cosplay a little less lame than it used to be. So it was very lame at this time. Very, very not cool to do. And I was still in the height of, I'm too cool for this, the obnoxious scene kid thing going on. So realistically, cosplay wasn't gonna actually happen for me. I wasn't gonna do it. But I saw it, and I appreciated it from afar, and was like, that would be really neat. But shh, don't tell anyone. I'm gonna say there's two incidents that really created who I am today. The first one in 2010, when I still wasn't using my Tumblr a whole lot, I had a friend at McDonald's, we both worked there, who was going to an anime convention and was very insistent that I come with. I can't remember why they wanted me to come. I'd never really expressed a huge interest in anime. Like, I'd watched some, like the Sailor Moons, Tokyo Mew Mews, whatever was kind of on that 4Kids TV I'd watched. But it wasn't like something huge for me. Remember, I'm still very in this I'm too cool phase. I was buying a lot of Invader Zim. I did buy some Pokemon, not a lot. Just like very weird stuff, honestly. But they really, really wanted me to come to this convention with this other friend. It was called Anime Evolution, which sadly does not exist anymore, and for whatever reason, I eventually agreed. I think she talked me into it by saying, we'll get you dressed up like us. We'll get you a costume. You'll have fun. And I was like, okay. Like, I'd kind of seen this a little bit on Tumblr. I really needed something to do probably that weekend too. I mean, I was a teenager working at McDonald's. Realistically, what was I doing with my time? Nothing. And this was the first person who could, like, take me. I was going to ask my parents to take me to this sort of stuff. So, I finally agreed. She decides that we're going to dress me up as Nana. And at this time I have seen the Nana anime. I do know who this is. And I was like, cool, Nana's really awesome. I'm into that. I will have a good time, I assume. And it's something that at least is kind of alternative, so it makes sense for me. And I won't look too weird because it's not like it's a big giant costume. This is what I looked like. How much Nana do you see in there? Because I saw none. And I'm 9,000% sure everybody else saw none too. Can't really blame them. They had to, like, get me in something with a day or two's notice, and I had no costume material, and they only had what they picked for themselves. So this is what we came up with. The skirt, I think the fishnets and the boots were mine. The necklace, the tie thing, I think even the tank top was borrowed. I didn't have a wig. I had some makeup on. Let's just say as a teenager, my makeup skills were even worse than they are now, which is quite saying something because I'm not great. But yeah, that's what I was. And I was surprised when people couldn't figure out who I was back then, so that's great. Overall, I did have a good time at the convention. It was a lot of fun. I got to see what these kind of things are like. I'd never been to one. I got to watch them get lots of photos. They were quite popular. I still don't know what my friend actually was. She had 2 pigtails, and everybody knew who she was. Maybe it was something from Death Note? I can't remember. I do know that the other person who came with us was CL Phantom Hive, I don't know, whatever, in the pink dress that he wears to, like, trick some creepy old man in the anime. At the time, I hadn't seen the anime, so, like, or read the manga, I guess. So they were, like, trying to explain to me what this was, and I was just like, okay. I later did watch it. Not really my thing. Not attacking anybody who likes Black Butler. It wasn't, like, the worst thing. It's just definitely not up my alley. But I get now what they were. I understand. There was a bit of weirdness that I think freaked me out from conventions for a little while. And anyone who's been to, especially anime conventions back then, definitely knows what I'm talking about. Let's just say you should all be very happy that glump circles are not still a thing. Seriously, thank God. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. There was definitely some stuff that freaked me out, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I ever want to go back to one of these. I don't know if I want to deal with this. Other than that, other than a few small things, overall, like, I enjoyed being with my friends. I'm sure we saw some panels. I honestly don't remember. I took like 5 million photos. That's what I remember doing. But, yeah, I definitely was like, okay, cool. Like, I had an overall okay time. I just don't know if I'm ever coming back. The second thing that really got me to who I am today is in, I'm pretty sure, grade 11, nearing like the end of it probably, some friends brought me to a comic book store. And I was definitely edging out of the I'm too cool for this phase, sort of, a little bit. Enough that I was willing to go. And I had a good time, actually. I bought an Oz comic book. I don't know why I didn't buy, like, a Marvel or a DC. I probably at the time just didn't quite care as much, right? It was just like, whatever. So I bought an Oz. I purchased an Invader Zim DVD box set that looks like his house. It had a little Gur figure in the roof. I loved it. This was the first collectible that I have ever purchased, and what started off this mess. So you guys can thank Invader Zim for that. So this really got me going on everything kind of nerdy, let's say. I kept going back, I kept buying more comics, I started getting actual, like, Marvel comics. I didn't buy a lot of DC yet, I still actually don't buy a lot of DC, but Marvel was definitely my big main focus, especially since the movies were out. I was enjoying a lot of those. So this put me on the path of the nerdy life that I now lead. So thank you to my friends who took me to an anime convention, and thank you to my friends who dragged me to a comic book store. It's your fault. So I still hadn't officially decided to cosplay at this point, and I was still just seeing it on my Tumblr as I went through, and then it happened. The Avengers came out. Now, I had really liked Loki in the Thor movie that had come out. I definitely started being drawn towards him then. I just didn't have quite the same pull. The Avengers came out, I saw him on that screen, he had that outfit that, honestly, I don't think he's ever looked as good as Gen. Like, don't get me wrong, I love him in Ragnarok, but this look, beautiful, beautiful. So I took, like, one look at that and was like, I want to be that. I lost my little mind. I knew what cosplay was by this point, and I was like, I love that. I love one man. I love one man, and I want to be that man. I want to wear that man's outfit. So it was Loki. It was all Loki's fault. I very quickly sat down with myself and had a little word and said, Justine, you've never made an outfit before, and you've taken like 2 high school sewing classes. You're not making that. And boy, was I right. I still definitely don't think I could make it now. Way too much leather, way too much crisscrossy action happening. No. So I definitely couldn't have made it back then. But I was not happy. I wanted to be Loki, and I felt that I would be very disappointed if I made that version then, because it would have looked real bad. Like, real bad. So I started searching for something that I could make. There's definitely a lot less Loki options back then. He's got a lot more comics, a lot more looks now, so anyone who loves Loki, I'm very happy for you. I eventually decided, after collecting up as many Loki comics as I could, seeing as many versions, that I was going to do Lady Loki. Easier, didn't really require, like, armor if I didn't want to do it, which I didn't, and I figured that that was definitely something I could at least be satisfied with until I could make a proper Loki. So I started on that journey. I did not own a sewing machine. I had to drive an hour all the way out to my grandmother's house to work on this a couple times. She also was a big help, showed me sewing techniques, showed me kind of how to draft basic patterns at the time, because everything I needed to make did not have a pattern. She was not happy that the green that I wanted on the edging of everything was this annoying stretch, like sparkly material. It was not nice for us to work with, but we pushed through, and I am eternally grateful for all the help and advice she has given me. She's realistically the reason why I can sew. She's realistically the reason I even have a sewing machine. When she upgraded, I got her machine. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to my wonderful grandmother, who I love in my soul. So I made Lady Loki. I did it. I had a cosplay. Now I needed to wear her somewhere. I once again returned to anime conventions. This one was Anime Revolution. I don't know if that existed back when Anime Evolution first did. I know Anime Evolution definitely came first, but I just don't know if Revolution also existed in 2010. I barely even knew that first one did. But yes, Anime Revolution, because I had a friend who was going, actually, as Rapunzel, weirdly enough, so I was like, oh, clearly you don't have to wear just anime to these things, it'll be fine, and I would know somebody. I dragged along my partner at the time. He was less than stoked, but he came with me because I was freaked out. I had never been to one by myself. The last one I had been to, people were a little weird, and this time I was actually fully dressed up, and I was in things like a corset and a loincloth, and I just wasn't ready to be on my own. So he came with me, And overall, I had a great time. I felt really good in my outfit. For a first outfit, like, I still to this day say she's not perfect, like, far, far, far from it. But for a first outfit, like, I'm really proud of what I did, you know? I did get some negative comments. One person was like, your horns are on backwards, and, oh, they just look too battle damaged, and shit like that. But overall, it was okay. I did get a few weirdos, so I'm quite glad that I did bring my boyfriend at the time. One guy followed me around for a while just wanting to, like, pet my fur, and I was like, dude, I don't know you. Like, don't touch me and don't follow me. It was wild. Overall, I did have a good time. I really enjoyed being Lady Loki. So I followed it up shortly later with another convention, Cause and Effect, that I went for just one day after work. So I actually feel like I only went for like 5 hours, if I remember correctly. We had to drive all the way out there. It was really far from where we worked. But I got there, I changed in my work bathroom, and then kind of in the car on the way, just because I wanted to experience another convention, and I just love being Lady Loki, and had a really good experience there too. There was definitely still a glomp circle, but that's fine. I did not go near it. I knew better now. But I was having a great time. I love this, and I decided, well, I like this, so I should probably have another cosplay. Get that started. I did Jack from Harvest Moon next. I wore that out to SakinoCon, which was the first time I traveled for a convention. Had to get to the island. I think I just went for one day, if I remember correctly. Someone dropped me off and then brought me home at the end of it, so thank you to them. It was good. It was also the first time I went up on stage in a costume. I didn't sew Jack. I like took things off the outfit that didn't need, and I painted the hat, but it was a small convention. Anyone could just sign up, and I was like, sure, I'll sign up. I'll go on stage. Even back then, I like to be the center of attention. It was fun. I went up, and I had a good time. Previously, before me, a Lady Loki and a Thor had gone up, and they had made some joke around cows to do with her horns, and I can't remember what the specific joke was, but they had drawn a cow up on, like, the whiteboard that was behind it. So I went up as this Harvest Moon character, and I'm, like, ringing my annoying cowbell, because, of course, I was obnoxious, and I was kind of like, has anybody seen my cow? And I, like, point to their drawing and, like, out towards the audience where Lady Loki has gone back, and everybody laughed. I hope Lady Loki is okay with that. I thought about that years later, that I didn't really ask, and I wasn't really part of that joke, so please forgive me if you didn't like that, Lady Loki. I'm sorry. I was new and I had no idea what I was doing. So that was fun. I went back to sewing again afterwards. I made Peter Pan, which is another outfit that I drove all the way out to my grandmother's house to help because it had to be fully sewn, and she was a great big help, and I liked the way it turned out. Again, still not like perfect. I would make it better now, which is why I eventually have plans to remake it. I'm just like, I'm getting there. There's a lot going on upstairs for cosplay plans. But I was happy. I incorrectly binded, meaning not only did I use tensor bandages, I then taped the tensor bandages because I didn't want them sliding around. Don't do that. Do not use tensor bandages. Do not use tape. Please get a proper binder. If there's one very important piece of wisdom I can pass down right now, do not incorrectly bind. It is not healthy. But I wore Peter and Lady Loki to Fan Expo, which had been my very first Fan Expo. That was also the very first time I met Steph. She was Captain America and looked, oh my god, fantastic. I still say that to this day. She looked great. And she complimented me on my Peter Pan, and I was like, man, this is garbage. Are you sure? But she was so sweet, so nice, and was actually one of the reasons, like, I continued to cosplay. I had continued to get a lot of weird remarks. A lot of people aren't very nice, and she had really lifted me up and made me feel good, and I felt I could continue in this hobby. So once again, thank you to Steph. I have told her that, and I will tell her that till the day she dies because I love her, and I want her to know how important she is. And then realistically, it just kept growing from there. I alternated between costumes I could sew and costumes I could just kind of buy to give me a break sometimes from sewing and to make sure I could, like, fill the gaps in between outfits. Back then, it definitely took me like a year to make anything because after Peter Pan I was working on my own. I didn't go out to see my grandmother anymore. Now, It definitely still takes me a while to make some things, but I'm a lot quicker than I used to be. I just kept working and working. I went to various conventions with friends. I just fell in love with this silly hobby. I'm very grateful for it. It gives me a great creative outlet. I have met so many friends because of this hobby. There's been some negatives throughout it. That happens. There's gonna be negatives in anything, but overall, it's been one of the best decisions of my life to actually start cosplaying. So if you are someone who's been on the fence about starting, you should do it. You should definitely do it. Start with something simple. Just have a good time. You can buy your outfits. I made a video on my opinion on buying versus making. Don't listen to anyone who says you can't. I still buy outfits. Crowley is like completely bought. That's my most recent one, except for the red that I put into the collar. I don't care. Oh! And except for the necktie thing, which my Aziraphale made for me. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this story. Leave me a comment below about what your origin is. I would love to hear it. Maybe it's a lot more basic than mine. Maybe it's a lot more complicated. Either way, I'm into it. And we are finally at the end, so I will see everybody next time. Bye. Go watch Stranger Things.